What is the best event involving playing silly games and winning silly prizes that you have witnessed? The kids at my school used to play a game in which they would run out onto the road and compete to see how long they could last before they ran back out onto the sidewalk. Whoever ran in the least amount of time became the chicken. At my school, kids didn't realize until after they died that it wasn't a very clever game. I hope the driver didn't get in trouble. Not me, but my brother was driving on the freeway late at night on his way home from work. He was overtaken by a group of idiots on sport bikes doing somersaults and claps. The speed limit was 65 kilometers per hour, and he usually drove 10 kilometers per hour more. That is, probably over 100 miles per hour. There was a gentle bend in the highway a mile after a small hill, and as he went over it, he saw all the motorcyclists stop and huddle together, terrified of what was obviously going to be an accident. Since he was off duty at the time, he stopped and walked back to see if he could help. When he returned to them, it was clear that one of the cyclists had lost control of his bike, slid off his bike at a very high rate of speed and was literally cut in half by one of the fence posts. All of the motorcyclists were panicked, nauseous, and standing and staring off into the distance 1,000 meters away. There wasn't much the cyclist could do, but he called the police and ambulance and stayed there until they arrived. We don't know what happened to the riders, but we're sure one of them died at the scene. This is an instructive and important lesson. A few years ago, I saw a man panic at Burger King. He was furious that there was no barbecue sauce to go with his Whopper. An employee told him that they could give him barbecue sauce, but they don't usually put sauce on burgers. The man then started yelling that it was late and the burgers were cold, so the sauce didn't matter. He then spit at the employee. Luckily, it just fell on the counter. He threw a burger at the employee with the words, "Give me another burger, retiree." Several customers who were half out of ketchup moved to intercept, but before we could do anything, the employee went on a tirade, grabbed the burger off the warming rack and started hurling it at the man. He yelled, "You can eat all the hamburger you want, just get the hell out." The man recoiled back and with super speed knocked him out of there. There was shocked silence for a moment, but then everyone started telling the employees that it was okay, there was no need to get upset and that the man was a horrible person. The manager came over and told the employee that she could go on her break. He didn't seem too upset to berate the girl. So I hope nothing bad happened after that. As an aside, I still think I and maybe other shoppers should have stepped in and helped the kid sooner. But the girl did the best she could for herself. I would have been fired immediately. In high school, a big guy got into a fight with a little Asian kid who knew self-defense techniques. The bigger one tried to hit the smaller one and missed, and the smaller one got hit 3 times in the face and got a nosebleed. Oddly enough, both were suspended for 7 days. I was breaking up a fight between a friend of mine and a very grumpy kid. Long story short, but we all got suspended. Another friend was pushed against a wall. He didn't say anything to the offending little asshole, but he got suspended for fighting. Stuck on 696 near Detroit. Thanks to an accident and summer lodge construction, traffic is barely moving. So it's a normal day. I was in the outside lane waiting to go south to Dearborn when some idiot on a Mustang went 40 miles per hour on the side of the road. Another 20 or 30 cars passed by. Then there was a squeal of tires, a screech and a honk. Damn it, I can't go anywhere else. People were turning left, going around the accident scene, and I saw what had happened. The Mustang had slammed into a parked state police car. Just then, Karma was overtaken by a Corsa VXR traveling at least 90 plus 30 miles per hour. I was another 20 or 25 minutes ahead of the car, which was lying upside down in a ditch, completely wrecked and surrounded by police and medics. A local thug decided to beat up a drug dealer and steal his stash. The drug dealer returned later, caught the thug at the bar, aimed a shotgun at his chest at point-blank range and fired. Click, misfire. The local thug jumps behind the bar and gets shot in the buttock, running off into the bar's freezer. The dealer escapes half alive. Career criminals have learned to follow different rules. One client was not on the best of terms with her daughter's biological mother. The pregnancy was essentially accidental. However, he wanted to maintain a relationship with his daughter and arranged for custody and parenting time. The daughter was injured in a car accident while the mother was present, and the mother decided to prevent the father from communicating with his daughter. The mother told the father, "If you want to see your daughter, take me to court." He did so, but she continued to ignore the court date. A warrant was then issued for her arrest, and she had to appear before a judge in handcuffs. She was then ordered to pay her father $5,000 for legal fees to force him to appear in court, as well as compensate for the additional parenting time she was deprived of. Not the best legal strategy I've seen, unless the other party's failure to appear in court is one of the worst things you can do in your life. Another time, on a train, a man was trying to pick up a girl. A woman came up behind him and shouted, "How are you going to celebrate a girl with a baby in a place like this?" Me, my wife, and the old man next door started laughing. My sister and cousin were playing with physical therapy tape. They each held a pen and tried to determine how far they could walk backwards. When my cousin tried to let go of her pen, the string snapped off and hit my sister in the eye. We were all at another younger cousin's birthday party, so the whole family was there. Everyone heard my sister screaming and rushed over to her. My sister's eye was pretty badly damaged. I think she started bleeding internally and was in danger of glaucoma. She ended up needing surgery and had to wear an eye patch for most of 6th grade. I slapped myself on the forehead, played with the ring, and passed out. At the local hospital where I work, there was a patient who was having a knee replacement. He saw the nurses and physical therapists interacting with him. By the end of the first day, he was watching them like a hawk. The patient demanded to be sent home. He insisted that he could do everything himself and would not take no for an answer. He signed the appropriate papers to be discharged against the doctor's recommendations. 3 days later, he ended up in the emergency room with a raging infection at the surgical site. The day he arrived that year was to be the day he was discharged. At work, when the elevator moves strangely, skips floors or doesn't level out, it means it's about to stop working. I mentioned this to my coworker before he entered the elevator. He acted like I and told me to drop him off because he was going to lunch. Sure enough, the elevator was stuck on the 7th floor for 20 minutes. When he got off the elevator, he looked really stupid. It is common for patients to go home after surgery on the first day of knee arthroplasty. Unless they forgot to take antibiotics, it is unlikely that this is the cause. It's probably just bad luck. Some time ago, I visited the Indianapolis Zoo. It features gibbon monkeys and otter monkeys. If you've ever seen a gibbon, you know they aren't very big, but they have very long arms. The exhibit is surrounded by nets, and in one corner you can sit on the wall next to the nets. They're huge, like they only eat Midwestern fried food, dressed in the best clothes at Walmart, and they're wearing red. One of them looks like the dumb fat guy from Central Casting. He looks like a kid from Bad Santa, with low hygiene standards. This boy was sitting on the wall next to the set, stuffing goldfish crackers in his mouth like he was in a contest. Then a tenant monkey appeared and gave him a death stare. Then the boy stopped, looked at the Tenagazaru, slowly reached into the box, pulled out a cracker and waved it in front of the Tenagazaru. Tenagazaru slowly extended his hand and the child took the cracker back and said, "Silly monkey." Now Tenagazaru is a monkey. I looked into his eyes and saw that the tenant monkey was deeply offended. Tenagazaru pulled his hand back into the net and returned to his death stare. The child put the cracker back down and shook it again, only to stare death in the face. Then the child moved even closer and started teasing the monkey tenant again. No response. Then the kid comes even closer and yells even louder. The net is supported by a rather sturdy-looking pole, which came between the child and the gibbon. The gibbon stretched out its arms like a cobra and pulled the child into the pole. It sounded like Big Ben. The baby fell to the ground with a big knot on its head, screaming bloody murder, and the Tenagwazer, who had somehow gotten a box of crackers, slowly ate the crackers with the same death stare. It was glorious. That's how a story should be written. Well done, my friend. My friend wanted a taste of what it's like. 10 years later, his marriage is broken up, he's lost visitation rights to his children, is virtually unemployed, can't afford his own house, and is sleeping in his parents' basement. In one unsavory bar, he was hitting on a female bartender. He kept trying to flirt, and when she ignored him, he jumped over the bar and tried to touch her. She pushed him onto the bar and he hit his head on a wine glass. That's a quick way to get your ass kicked in any bar I've been to. A dozen men will always help a female bartender. I've seen men try to use physical force during an unwanted flirtation, and every time some idiot hit the bartender, he got beaten up. A man nearly shot a police officer during an ambush attack. Apparently only one officer was wounded, but he fired many rounds at other police officers on the scene. As the officers approached the officer, the bad guy jumped over a fence with a gun in his hand. The bad guy shot himself in the head, DRT, saving the suspect a lot of taxpayer money. My meticulous cousin threw one of my chickens across the yard during a tantrum. That's a grown man, not a child. I just thought I should tell you before you think the little kid is getting too much bounty. My goose and gosling parents bought 3 babies at the flea market so they could have a proper family, since only one was their own chick, but out of a nest of 6 goslings, only one was born alive. One of them turned out to be a duck that attacked him, knocked him down and bruised him so badly that he thought his testicles had burst. But it wasn't. I didn't help him until I got some money from my aunt. Why don't his parents kick his ass? A few months later, he happened to go back to the garden outside. There were geese patrolling there. Did you know that geese memorize people? He either loves them or hates them. Now he knows. The toddlers were fully grown and could participate, but not the kicking toddler. The kicking toddler staggered around like a drunk, but there was nothing malicious about him before or after the abuse. He just sat in a lawn chair and watched the bird fall. His aunt didn't bother to pay to help him then. As it started to get dark and I was about to lock the goose in the shelter, it occurred to me, LDR, don't mess with geese. They will make you panic. My geese loved me, but they broke my leg. I ignored him because I wanted him to ignore me and he knocked me off the porch, I think accidentally. What a freak, that goose. Doesn't he know that the goose is the right hand of Satan? I didn't witness it, but a friend told me about it. 2 men and a woman were stealing cars. The woman would lie down on the highway and pretend to be half dead. Then someone would stop and get out to help her, and the man would come over and steal her car. At one point this woman was lying on the highway so that her head was directly in contact with the tires of the car. Then the driver of a huge semi-truck didn't see her and drove over her head. Natural selection and causation. During a brief stint in the post-production office, I heard a story about what happened to one of the employees. The previous Friday, you may not know this, but in the media industry it is customary for clients to order alcoholic beverages on Fridays. Some companies even have bars for this purpose. Naturally, employees will also consume alcohol. And while most stores are fine with this, there is always someone who messes it up. Apparently, this person started drinking early and got pretty intoxicated within a couple hours. First he disappeared for 2 hours, but then he came back and told his supervisor that he was too drunk to work. Of course, that was no excuse, so he continued working for a while longer. A few hours later, the head producer found him lying face down on the floor in the production room. The next day, he was brought into the office to talk to him. Know your boundaries. I remember there was a guy in our high school whose last name was Off, but he was always called a Jack. One day he was sitting alone at lunch minding his own business, and a kid came up to him and wouldn't leave him alone, calling him a jack and a host of other offensive words over and over again. The kid, whose last name is Off, calmly stood up, looked the other guy in the eye and said, "If you want to deal with this after school, fine, but it's not something that needs to be done here and now." The bully then shoved a kid with the last name Off. Before anything happened, I heard the hardest sound I've ever heard in my life, bone on bone. He hit another kid so hard in the face that his cheek sunk in and he needed reconstructive surgery. The kid named Off went back to his lunch as if nothing had happened, and the bully, poor wrinkly, dragged his buttocks from the cafeteria crying. Sweet, sweet justice. As long as you don't get hit hard enough, your cheeks won't fall in. Some meticulous bastard was making his way through a pretty tight section of traffic that was still moving at a pretty fast pace. This was on I-10, a large freeway with multiple lanes in each direction. If you're familiar with Houston, he was traveling eastbound in the Katy area. The guy wasn't too far ahead, but he clearly thought he was a badass, no matter what kind of sports car he was driving. He clipped more than one person, and right after he clipped me, he clipped the guy next to me and managed to hook the rear tire of the semi that was parked next to him. Somehow he managed to swerve to the side of the road without hitting anyone or causing serious damage to his car. So I don't think he was physically injured or damaged, but hopefully his ego was hurt. That was the best part. I managed to miss 3 traffic lights because I was stuck sideways between lanes and couldn't back out because the oncoming lane was clogged with cars. People hated me. I got busted for DUI, and in a drunken stupor, I called a friend to come pick me up, hoping to get bail money. My friend drove up to the police station, pulled onto the sidewalk, turned around and parked halfway across the parking lot and halfway down the sidewalk. We staggered out of the car, walked, staggered, into the station. But we were all watching what was happening on the CCTV cameras. As soon as the man reached the front desk, a wave of strong odor of alcohol washed over us, soaking everything around us. We are behind bulletproof glass with a small opening for sound to penetrate, but from the smell you would have thought someone had emptied a keg onto the floor. This asshole drove drunk to the police station to bail out a comrade who had just been arrested for DUI. Once at the police station, this jackass was so drunk he couldn't even remember why he was there. We had to tell him, yes, you can see your friend, but only for a short time on your way to your cell. And so, instead of keeping an eye on the prisoners, the constable had to keep an eye on 2 drunken lunatics. Those of us who stayed behind laughed at the absurdity of the situation. Alcohol really does make people stupider. I worked in a grocery store on a small shopping street. In one of the other stores was a karate dojo. Teenage punks like to hang out and cause trouble in this trashy little mall. I know their ages because my mom taught there, but 3 8th graders would come and stand at the entrance to the studio, taunting the kids and generally acting obnoxious. My daughter's studio was open all day. It must have been hot because it looked like there was some kind of ceremony going on. The father noticed the annoying teenagers and closed the door. They got angry and kept opening the door and teasing the man. Eventually he went outside and started arguing with them. I don't know what they were trying to accomplish, but when my dad came back, I saw the ringleader. My mom said he was the worst offender. Look at that. Rangoon jumped on the man's back. The man threw him off with his shoulder. The kid flew off and hit his face on the ground. His glasses cracked, his teeth shattered. Great justice. The police were called by his family. I saw the whole thing and thought he might be scared, so I was allowed to leave work early to testify. Eventually the case went to trial and he was released. I had to appear in front of the judge. There is a bridge in my town that is known for having a lot of accidents on it. This bridge is not a highway or anything like that. Today on my way to work, I drove past an accident involving two cars. The first car rear-ended the bridge and almost flew onto the curb, and the second car was demolished. No one was killed, but there were injuries. The woman was a fool for driving too fast on the bridge and got a nice prize of whiplash and a total loss of her car. Long story short, I was at a weird redneck event in upstate Wisconsin. It was a local event where snowmobilers raced around a lake, and if you kept top speed you could make it across in time, even in the summer. Oh, and the distance wasn't that long. One man got tied up, flipped over and almost drowned. Everyone was waiting for him to come up, but he didn't have time to react. Besides, everyone was drunk. I didn't expect so much from a downshifter. Your long story is shorter than most people's TLDR. I live in the Bay Area and I saw a short drunk in Oakland get into a fight outside a bar with a tall sober guy and immediately get knocked out. Then you saw his face and called him anal. That's right. I tried to throw myself. Tripped in the middle of the block. The waitress jumped on his back, kicked him in the back of the head and took his wallet from his back pocket. If I remember correctly, she paid the bill with his credit card and tipped herself. The wallet was then returned to him and he promptly fled. Wow. If taken literally, the dumbest game I know of is a contest where contestants chase a head of cheese down a hill. The prize is the cheese. Everyone is chasing something stupid and reckless. Is rolling cheese down Cooper's Hill mandatory for everyone? It's fun, it's dangerous, it's a centuries-old tradition. That's why people keep doing it. In 2014, a woman broke her neck and suffered a serious spinal injury, but returned in 2017 to try to complete the race. If this is your first time to this channel, subscribe to it. New videos will be released every day. Check back again to see a new video. See you soon.